My wife and her friends thought it would be funny to lock me outside my house in the rain. Let's see how long he can survive in the cold. They laughed and slammed the door shut. I never came back. 13 years later, she saw me. 215 missed calls. The rain hit me like a slap, cold and sharp. The second that door slammed shut, I stood there on the porch, my shirt sticking to my skin, my hair dripping into my eyes, waiting for the punchline. Sarah, my wife, had been laughing so hard her face turned red, her voice echoing with Lila, Mara, and Nora as they pushed me out. "Let's see how long he can survive in the cold," she'd said, like it was some big game. I could still hear them giggling through the wood, their voices muffled but alive, while I stood there stunned, thinking they'd open it back up any second. It was supposed to be funny, they said, a prank, something to tell at parties later. But then the lights flicked off inside. The blinds snapped shut one by one like eyes closing on me. I banged on the door, my knuckles stinging from the wet wood, yelling, "Sarah, come on, let me in." Nothing. Just the sound of rain smacking the ground and my own breathing, heavy and fast. I waited. Minutes turned into an hour. My teeth chattered. My fingers went numb, and still no one came. I kept picturing her face. Those sharp green eyes, that smirk she'd get when she knew she'd won something. I thought maybe she'd crack, feel bad, swing the door open with a fake apology and a towel. But the house stayed dark, silent, dead. Hours passed, and my legs shook so bad I could barely stand. I didn't have my phone, my wallet, nothing but the clothes soaking through to my bones. I looked at that door one last time, the one I'd painted blue for her last summer, and something in me just broke. Not loud, not with a scream, but quiet, like a string snapping inside. I turned around, stepped off the porch, and started walking. The rain swallowed me up, and I didn't look back. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't coming back to that house, to that laugh, to her. It wasn't funny anymore. It never was. My boots squished in the mud, and every step felt heavier, like the world was trying to pull me down. But I kept moving. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that stretched out like they were chasing me. I didn't have a plan, didn't have a clue what came next. All I had was this ache, this raw, jagged thing in my chest telling me I'd been a fool to think she'd ever cared. I walked past our neighbor's house, the one with the yappy dog that always barked at me. But even he was quiet tonight. Maybe he knew. Maybe he saw it coming. I didn't stop to think about what I'd left behind: my keys, my job, my whole damn life. None of it mattered right then. The rain kept pouring, and I kept walking, my hands shoved deep in my pockets, my head down against the wind. I don't know how long I went before the cold started to feel normal, like it was part of me now. I passed a gas station, the clerk inside staring at me through the glass like I was some ghost drifting by. Maybe I was. I didn't stop. I didn't ask for help. I just kept going, one foot in front of the other, until the town I'd known for 10 years started to fade behind me. That night, out there in the dark, I wasn't James anymore, not the guy who fixed the sink or paid the bills or laughed at Sarah's dumb jokes. I was just a man walking away, leaving everything I'd built to rot behind that slammed door. And somehow that felt right. The rain came down hard, hitting me like 1,000 tiny punches, cold and mean. The second that door slammed shut behind me, I stood there on the porch, my thin shirt clinging to my chest, water dripping from my hair into my eyes, waiting for it to stop being a joke. Sarah, my wife, had been laughing so loud her voice cracked, her friends Lila, Mara, and Nora joining in as they shoved me out into the storm. "Let's see how long he can survive in the cold," she'd yelled, her words sharp and playful, like this was all some big, hilarious game. I could still hear them through the door, their giggles bouncing around inside while I stood there, soaked and confused, thinking any minute they'd swing it back open and let me in. They'd said it was supposed to be funny, a stupid prank, something to laugh about later over beers. But then the lights inside flicked off one by one, like the house was shutting me out for good. The blinds snapped shut, the little slats clattering together, sealing me off from the warm glow I'd seen just minutes ago. I banged on the door, my knuckles raw against the wet wood, shouting, "Sarah, come on, this isn't funny anymore, let me in." My voice sounded small against the roar of the rain, and no one answered, just silence, thick and heavy, pressing down on me. I waited, shifting from one foot to the other, my sneakers squishing in the puddle forming under me. Minutes dragged on, turning into an hour, maybe more. I couldn't tell. My teeth started chattering, my hands went numb, and still nothing, no footsteps, no voices, no sign they even cared. I was out here. I kept picturing Sarah's face. Those sharp green eyes that could cut right through you, that little smirk she'd flash when she knew she'd got her way. I told myself she'd crack soon, feel bad, come running out with a towel and a half sorry. We didn't mean it, but the house stayed dark, the windows blank and lifeless, like it had forgotten me already. My legs shook so bad I had to lean against the railing just to stay up. I didn't have my phone, left it on the coffee table. No wallet either. Just the drenched clothes sticking to me like a second skin. I stared at that door, the one I'd painted blue for her last summer because she said it looked cute. Hours passed, and the cold sank deeper, wrapping around my bones until I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. Something in me broke right then, not loud, not with a yell or a sob, but quiet, like a piece of me just gave up. I turned away from the door, stepped off the porch, and started walking. The rain swallowed me whole, pouring down my face, mixing with the heat I could still feel in my cheeks from the embarrassment, the anger. I didn't look back. My boots sank into the mud along the front yard, each step slow and heavy, like the ground wanted to hold me there. But I kept going. The streetlights buzzed overhead, throwing weak yellow light across the wet pavement, stretching my shadow out long and thin behind me. I didn't know where I was headed, no plan, no direction, just away. Away from that house, that laugh, her. It wasn't funny anymore. It never was, not really. I walked past old Mr. Hensley's place, the guy with the yappy little dog that always barked at me when I mowed the lawn. Tonight, even that mutt was quiet, probably curled up somewhere dry while I trudged through the downpour. I didn't stop to think about what I was leaving my keys, my job at the hardware store, the life I'd spent 10 years building with her. None of it felt real anymore. The rain kept coming, relentless, soaking through my socks, my jeans, everything. I shoved my hands deep in my pockets, my head down against the wind cutting through me. I passed the gas station on the corner, the clerk inside watching me through the streaky glass, like I was some kind of lost soul wandering by. Maybe I was. I didn't wave, didn't ask for a ride or a phone, just kept moving. My breath came out in shaky puffs, mixing with the rain, and after a while, the cold didn't even feel cold anymore. It was just there, part of me, like I'd been born into it. The houses thinned out, the streets got narrower, and the town I'd known forever started to blur behind me. That night, out there in the dark, I wasn't James anymore, not the guy who fixed leaky faucets or grilled burgers on Sundays, or laughed at Sarah's dumb little jabs. I was just a man walking away, leaving everything I'd ever known to drown in that storm. And somehow, as the rain beat down and my legs kept carrying me forward, that felt right. Like I was finally free, even if I didn't know what came next. The rain hadn't stopped, and neither had I, not until my legs felt like they'd give out under me. I was miles from home now, somewhere along a stretch of road I didn't recognize, with no wallet, no phone, just the wet clothes hanging off me and this dull, cracked thing inside my chest. My sneakers squished with every step, water seeping out the sides, and my hands were shoved so deep in my pockets. I could feel the soggy lint against my knuckles. I didn't know what I was doing, just walking, moving, trying to outrun the sound of Sarah's laugh still ringing in my ears. The rain mixed with the heat in my face, that slow burn of shame and anger I couldn't shake, and I kept my head down, watching the pavement blur under my feet. I didn't knock on any doors, didn't wave at the few cars that splashed by, their headlights cutting through the dark. I didn't want anyone's pity, didn't want to explain why I was out here looking like a drowned dog. I just kept going, one step after another, until a pickup truck slowed beside me, its engine rumbling low and steady. The window rolled down, and an old guy with a scruffy beard leaned out, squinting at me through the rain. "You lost, son?" he asked, his voice rough but not unkind. I shook my head, water dripping off my nose. "Just need a ride," I said, my throat tight from the cold. He jerked his thumb toward the passenger side. "Hop in. Name's Hank." I didn't argue, didn't care where he was going. I climbed in, the seat creaking under me, and the cab smelled like hay and motor oil. Hank didn't ask questions, didn't push, just drove, the wipers slapping back and forth across the windshield. I stared out the window, watching the world slide by in streaks of gray and black, and for a while, neither of us said a word. He dropped me off 2 counties over in some little town I'd never heard of, pulling up to a gas station with a flickering sign. "Take care, kid," he said, tipping his cap before driving off into the night. I stood there under the awning, dripping onto the concrete, my breath fogging in the chilly air. The town was small, barely a main street. A few shops with dark windows, a bar with a neon sign buzzing faintly. I didn't have a dime, didn't know a soul, but I wasn't going back. Not ever. I started walking again, slower now, my body aching from the cold and the miles. A guy in a beat-up coat pointed me toward a shelter a few blocks down, muttering something about it being open late. I found it, a squat brick building with a crooked sign that read Hope House. The door creaked when I pushed it open, and the smell hit me right away: wet shoes, stale coffee, a hint of bleach. Inside, a big guy with a gray buzz cut looked up from a desk cluttered with papers. "You got a name?" he asked, his voice gruff but not mean. "James," I said. The word felt strange in my mouth, like it didn't belong to me anymore. He nodded, scribbled something down, and pointed me toward a row of cots in the back. "Bed's yours." "Don't cause trouble." I mumbled a thanks and shuffled over, my wet clothes leaving a trail on the floor. The cot was narrow, the blanket thin, but it was warmer than the rain, warmer than that porch I'd been locked out of. I peeled off my soaked shirt and jeans, draping them over a chair to dry, and sank onto the mattress in my boxers. The springs groaned under me, but I didn't care. I lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the snores and coughs of the other guys in the room. My mind kept trying to drag me back to Sarah, to the sound of that door slamming, to the way her friends had laughed like I was nothing. But I wouldn't let it. I was here now, in this smelly shelter with a guy named Victor running the show, and that was enough. I didn't sleep much that night, just drifted in and out, the rain still tapping against the windows like it was following me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, but I pushed it away, focused on the feel of the dry blanket, the sound of my own breathing. This was rock-bottom wet, broke, and alone in a town I didn't know, but it was mine. No one was laughing at me here. No one was slamming doors. I gave them my real name, James, because it felt like the first step to figuring out who I was without her. The past was gone, washed away in that storm, and as I lay there shivering under that thin blanket, I told myself I'd make something new, something better, even if I didn't know how yet. The shelter was a blur of gray mornings and restless nights, but it kept me alive those first few days. Victor, the gruff guy who ran the place, didn't mess around. He handed out rules like they were carved in stone, but he also made sure we ate, even if it was just watery oatmeal and day-old bread. I didn't talk much, kept my head down, still feeling the weight of that slammed door in my bones. My clothes had dried stiff and sour, but they were all I had, so I wore them anyway. One morning, Victor caught me scrubbing my hands in the bathroom sink, trying to wash off the dirt and the shame that clung to me like mud. "You need work?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. His voice was rough, like gravel crunching under boots, but his eyes weren't cold. I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. He jerked his head toward the street. "Millie's Diner, down the road. Mabel might need a hand. Tell her I sent you." I didn't ask questions, just grabbed my stuff, a beat-up backpack. Someone had left behind and headed out. The air was crisp, the rain finally gone, leaving puddles that reflected the pale sky. The diner wasn't far, a squat little building with chipped red paint and a sign that flickered open in neon. I pushed through the glass door, a bell jingling above me, and the smell of grease and coffee hit me like a warm wave. Inside, it was all worn booths and sticky tabletops, the kind of place that hadn't changed in decades. An older woman stood behind the counter, wiping it down with a rag, her gray hair pulled tight in a bun. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes narrowing like she was sizing me up. "You Victor's boy?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I nodded. "He said you might need help," she snorted, tossing me a towel and a faded name tag that said Jim. "Dishwasher quit last night. Stole a bottle of whiskey on his way out. You steal, you're dead. Start now." I didn't argue, didn't have the energy to. She pointed me toward the back, a cramped kitchen with a sink piled high with greasy plates and coffee mugs. I got to work, rolling up my sleeves, plunging my hands into the steaming water. The heat stung at first, but it felt good, like it was peeling away the numbness that had settled over me since that night. I scrubbed hard, the clatter of dishes drowning out the noise in my head. I didn't think about Sarah, not her laugh, not the way she'd locked me out, not the friends who'd egged her on. I focused on the plates, the way the soap slid off them, the rhythm of rinse, stack, repeat. Hours passed, my fingers wrinkling like prunes, my back aching from standing over the sink. Mabel poked her head in once, grunting when she saw the pile shrinking. "Not bad," she said, then disappeared back to the front. It wasn't much, but it felt like something, a tiny crack of light in the dark I'd been wandering through. The diner was loud waitresses hollering orders, the sizzle of bacon on the grill, and truckers laughing over their eggs. I stayed quiet, kept my head down, let the noise wash over me like it could clean out the mess inside. By the end of the shift, my arms were sore, my shirt damp with sweat and water, but my hands were steady. Mabel slid a plate across the counter when I was done. Burnt toast, a fried egg, a strip of bacon that looked like it had seen better days. "Eat," she said, not looking at me. I sat on a stool in the corner, the food warm in my stomach, and it hit me this was the first meal I'd had in days that wasn't cold or handed out in a line. It wasn't much, but it was mine, earned with my own hands. I chewed slow, tasting the char on the bread, the salt of the bacon, letting it settle me. The diner emptied out as the sun dipped low, leaving just the hum of the fridge and the clink of Mabel counting the register. I went back to the sink, tackling the last few pans, the hot water steaming up around me. I thought about the next shift, the next plate, the next dollar I'd tuck away. It wasn't a life yet, just a start, a shaky little foothold on a steep climb. But it was something. I'd walked away from Sarah, from that house, from everything I'd known, and now here I was, elbowed deep in dishwater, building something new. The ache was still there, dull and heavy, but it didn't own me anymore. I rinsed a skillet, watching the grease swirl down the drain, and told myself I'd keep going one dish, one day at a time. When I finished, Mabel tossed me a couple bucks from the till. "Come back tomorrow," she said, and I nodded. I stepped outside into the cool night, the stars sharp above me, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was running. I was standing still, right where I needed to be. The diner became my world. Greasy plates, burnt coffee, the hum of the exhaust fan over the grill. I'd been there a few weeks, saving every dime Mabel tossed my way, enough to get out of the shelter and into a cheap room above a barbershop down the street. It wasn't much, just a sagging bed, a wobbly table, and a window that rattled when the wind blew, but it was mine. I bought a second-hand coat from a thrift store, thick enough to keep the chill off, and a little flip phone from the gas station, the kind that barely held a charge. I didn't give the number to anyone, didn't call anyone either. Sarah didn't know where I was, and I wanted it that way. I'd started using the name James again, not hiding it like I had that first night at the shelter, but I kept everything else locked up tight. No one at the diner asked questions. Mabel didn't care, and the waitresses were too busy flirting with truckers for tips to bother with me. I liked it like that, the quiet wrapping around me like a shield. I didn't talk about the past, didn't let it creep in while I scrubbed pots or mopped the floor. But one night, after a long shift, I messed up. I was sitting on my bed, the room dark except for the glow of that cheap phone, and my thumb hovered over the screen. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was tired, maybe I was weak, but I typed her name into the search bar. Sarah's social media popped up. Her profile picture still that same smile I used to think was pretty. My heart stopped, a cold jolt running through me, and I scrolled. She'd been posting little poems, all flowery and sad. He walked off into the storm and never came back, one said. The words dripping with guilt she twisted into something else. Another, lost in the rain, a piece of me gone. Her friends were there too, Lila and Mara, leaving comments like, "We miss him and hope he's okay," acting like they hadn't laughed while I stood shivering outside. My stomach turned, a sour taste climbing up my throat. She'd made herself the victim, poor Sarah, abandoned by her husband, left to wonder what happened. Not a word about the door, the prank, the way they'd shut me out like I was trash. I sat there staring at the screen, my hand shaking, wanting to type something, anything, call her out, tell the world what she'd done. But I didn't. I couldn't. What was the point? She'd spin it, make me the bad guy again, and I'd be right back where I started, drowning in her game. I shut the phone off, my breath ragged, and tossed it onto the table. The silence in the room was heavy, but it was mine, clean, unbroken, free of her voice. I got up, paced the creaky floor, my boots scuffing against the wood. I wasn't going back there, not to her, not to that life. I grabbed the phone again, blocked her number, then hunted down every contact I could think of: Lila, Mara, Nora, even her cousin who'd never liked me. One by one, I cut them off, my finger jabbing the screen until there was nothing left tying me to that past. It felt like ripping out stitches, painful but necessary. I sank back onto the bed, the springs groaning under me, and stared at the ceiling. The barbershop downstairs was quiet, the street outside empty except for the occasional rumble of a car. I thought about the diner, the way the dishes piled up no matter how fast I scrubbed, the way Mabel grunted when I did a good job. It wasn't much, but it was real, something I'd built without her. Sarah could keep her poems, her lies, her little audience pretending she was some tragic heroine. I didn't need to scream or fight or prove anything. I had the sound of my own breathing, the weight of my own choices. I pulled the coat over me like a blanket, too tired to get under the sheets, and let the quiet take over. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was close. The next morning, I went back to the diner, my hands steady as I stacked plates, my mind clear for the first time in weeks. I didn't check her page again, didn't let her name creep into my thoughts. She was looking for me. I knew it, could feel it in the way those posts begged for attention, but she'd never find me. Not here, not in this new skin I was growing into. The phone stayed in my pocket, silent and empty of her, and I worked through the day, the clatter of the kitchen louder than any memory she could throw at me. When I walked home that night, the stars were out, sharp and bright, and I felt the silence settle deeper. It wasn't hers anymore. It was mine, and I'd fight to keep it that way. The days at the diner started to blur together, a steady rhythm of clanging dishes and sizzling grease that kept me grounded. I'd been there almost a year now, long enough to save up for a better coat and a pair of boots that didn't leak. The room above the barbershop was still home, small, drafty, but mine. I didn't think about Sarah much anymore, not on purpose anyway. She'd faded into the background, a ghost I'd locked out with every plate I scrubbed clean. Life was simple: work, sleep, eat, and I liked it that way. Then there was Clara. She started showing up at Millie's every Friday, always in the same corner booth with her laptop and a stack of notebooks. She was studying to be a nurse, she told me once. Her voice soft but tired, like she'd been running on coffee and willpower for too long. She had dark hair that fell into her eyes when she typed, and she barely looked up when I brought her coffee black. No sugar, same order every time. I didn't say much to her at first, just set the mug down and moved on. I wasn't looking for anything. Didn't trust myself to get close to anyone after Sarah. But something about Clara stuck with me: the way she'd chew her lip when she was stuck on a problem, the quiet way she'd thank me without making a fuss. I started switching up my name tags just for fun: Gus one week, Leo the next, Tom after that. Mabel had a whole box of old ones in the back, and I'd pin a new one on every Friday, waiting to see if she'd notice. She didn't say anything for a while, just kept her head down, her fingers tapping away at the keys. Then one morning, as I slid her coffee across the table, she looked up, her brown eyes catching mine. "Pretty sure your name was Josh last week," she said, a tiny smile tugging at her lips. I froze for a second, caught off guard, then grinned, the first real smile I'd felt in years. "Yeah, well, I like to keep things interesting," I said, my voice rough from disuse. She laughed, soft and easy, and something warm kicked in my chest. After that, we started talking, not much, just little things. She'd ask about the diner, I'd ask about her classes, and it grew from there, slow and quiet, like a plant pushing through cracked dirt. She wasn't like Sarah: no loud games, no sharp edges meant to cut. Clara was steady, real, with tired eyes that saw me without judging. Fridays turned into my favorite day, the one I'd wake up for with a little spark in my gut. I'd catch myself watching her from the kitchen door, the way she'd stretch her arms after hours of typing, her hair falling loose. One night, she stayed late, the diner mostly empty except for a couple truckers nursing beers at the counter. I brought her a refill she didn't ask for, and she looked up, surprised. "You don't have to do that," she said. But she took it anyway, her fingers brushing mine for a second. "I know," I said, sitting across from her, the booth creaking under me. We talked longer that time about her exams, the way the diner coffee tasted like tar, how she'd grown up in a town even smaller than this one. Her voice was calm, pulling me in, and I found myself telling her bits of me, not the whole story, not yet, just enough to feel human again. Weeks turned into months, and we became something: nothing big or loud, just a quiet thing that fit. She'd smile when I walked over, and I'd linger longer than I needed to, wiping down tables that were already clean. One Friday, she showed up with a little drawing, a stick figure in an apron with a name tag that said "Mystery Man." "Figured I'd call you that until you pick one," she said, grinning. I laughed, tucking it into my pocket, and that night, I walked her to her car, the air cool and sharp. "James," I said when we stopped by her beat-up hatchback. "My name's James." She nodded, like it made sense, and said, "Good to know you, James." It was simple, but it hit me hard. The first time in a long while I'd wanted someone to know me, the real me, not the guy hiding behind fake names. We didn't rush anything, didn't need to. She'd study, I'd work, and we'd find each other in the spaces between. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes, her eyes soft, and I'd feel that warmth again, spreading slow and steady. It wasn't love yet, not the wild kind I'd known before, but it was something better, something I could trust. And for the first time since that door slammed shut, I started to think maybe I wasn't broken after all, just bent, and Clara was the one helping me straighten out. One quiet coffee at a time, Clara moved into my little apartment 2 years after we met, her boxes of textbooks and scrubs stacked against the wall next to my secondhand couch. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with peeling paint and a stove that only worked half the time, but it felt full with her there, alive in a way it never had before. I'd been clean of the past for a while now. The sting of Sarah's laugh faded to a dull ache I could ignore most days. Work at the diner was steady, my hands rough from years of scrubbing, and Clara was finishing her nursing program, her tired smiles lighting up the place when she came home. We were building something real, something good, and I'd started to believe the worst was behind me. Then the texts started. I'd gotten a new phone a while back, a cheap one with a number I kept to myself only. Clara and Mabel had it so when it buzzed one night while we were eating takeout on the floor, I didn't think much, just picked it up expecting a shift change or something. But the screen lit up with a number I didn't know, and the message hit me like a punch. "James, it's Sarah. Please, we're worried. Come home." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth, the noodles slipping off, and I just stared at it, my chest tight. Clara glanced over, her brow creasing. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp enough to pull me back. I nodded too quick and set the phone face down on the carpet. "Yeah, just wrong number," I lied, shoving the words out past the lump in my throat. But it wasn't over. A week later, an email popped up, same tone, same guilt dripping off every word. "We miss you." "Where are you?" Then another text from a different number. "Please, James, we never meant for you to disappear." It was a joke. A joke. That word burned, lighting up every memory I'd buried. The rain, the cold, the sound of that door locking me out. My hand shook as I read it. Sitting on the edge of the bed while Clara showered, the steam creeping under the bathroom door. She'd found me. Sarah had tracked me down somehow after all this time, and now she was clawing her way back in. I wanted to throw the phone, smash it against the wall, but I just sat there, breathing hard, letting it sink in. She didn't know where I was. Not exactly, but she was close enough to make my skin crawl. I blocked the number, deleted the email, but they kept coming, new numbers. New pleas every few days, like clockwork. "We're sorry. Just talk to me. You can't keep running." Each one was a knife twisting deeper, trying to drag me back to that night. I didn't tell Clara at first. Didn't want her to see me unraveling. Didn't want her to think I was still tied to that mess. But she knew something was off. I'd catch her watching me when I'd stare too long at the screen, my jaw tight, my fingers hovering over the block button. One night, it got bad. I was sitting at the table, another text glowing in the dark. "James, the first need you." "Please." Clara walked in from a late shift, her scrubs wrinkled, and saw me before I could hide it. She didn't say anything, just set her bag down and stood there, her eyes steady on mine. I didn't move, didn't speak, just let her see the phone, the words, the weight of it all. She stepped closer, her hand resting on my shoulder, warm and solid. "You don't have to answer," she said, quiet but firm, like she knew exactly what I was fighting. I looked up at her, the steam from her shower still clinging to her hair, and something in me settled. She didn't push, didn't ask for the story, she just stayed there, letting me figure it out. I blocked the number, slid the phone into a drawer, and shut it hard. "It's her," I said finally, my voice low. "Sarah." "She won't stop." Clara nodded, like she'd guessed it all along, and sat across from me, her knees brushing mine. "She can't make you go back," she said. "This is your home now." Her words were simple, but they hit me deep, cutting through the noise. Sarah kept trying to shove into my life. I reached for her hand, her fingers curling around mine, and I held on tight. She was right. This was home here, with her, with the life we'd made. I didn't owe Sarah anything, not an answer, not a second of my time. The next day, I changed my number again, gave it only to Clara, and left the old one dead in that drawer. The texts stopped eventually, or at least I stopped seeing them, and the quiet came back, stronger this time. Clara didn't bring it up again, just kept being her steady, soft mine. We'd sit together at night, her head on my shoulder while she studied, and I'd feel the past slip further away, losing its grip. Sarah could beg all she wanted, but I was gone from her world, her jokes, her reach. My home was here with Clara, and I'd keep it that way, no matter how hard she tried to pull me back. The diner was my rhythm now, plates in, plates out. The hiss of the grill, a steady heartbeat I could count on. Clara and I had settled into our little apartment, her nursing shifts and my dishwashing hours weaving together like threads in a blanket. 2 years since she'd moved in, and the past felt like a shadow I'd finally outrun. I didn't check my phone for Sarah's messages anymore. Didn't need to. The drawer where I'd buried the old one stayed shut, collecting dust. Life was good simple, mine. Then one morning, Mabel caught me off guard. I was unloading crates of potatoes from the delivery truck, my arms sore from hefting the heavy sacks. When she stomped out of the kitchen, her apron streaked with flour. "James," she barked, her voice cutting through the clatter of the diner. I set the crate down, wiping sweat off my forehead, and turned to her. She had that look, eyes narrowed, lips tight, like she was about to chew me out for something. "I'm opening a second place," she said, crossing her arms. "Across town, bigger kitchen, more seats. "Wanna run it?" I stared at her, my mouth dry, not sure I'd heard right. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice rough from the cold air. She grunted a sound I'd learned meant yes. "You work hard. Don't lie. Don't whine. Say yes or get out." My brain scrambled, trying to catch up. Me, running a diner? I'd been a dishwasher, a nobody, for years, scraping by, keeping my head down. But Mabel didn't joke, didn't waste words. She stood there waiting, her foot tapping like I was taking too long. I thought about Clara. The way she'd smile when I told her, the way she'd believe in me even when I didn't. "Yes," I said finally, the words solid in my mouth. "I'll do it." She nodded once, sharp, then turned back to the kitchen like it was settled. I stood there, the crate at my feet, the weight of it sinking in. That night, I got home before Clara. She was pulling a late shift at the hospital. I paced the apartment, my boots scuffing the worn floor, trying to picture it me in charge, calling the shots. It scared me, the idea of stepping up like that, but it felt right too, like a door opening after years of being locked out. When Clara walked in, her scrubs wrinkled, and her hair a mess, I couldn't wait. "Mabel offered me the new diner," I blurted, standing by the stove where I'd been heating soup, "to run it, all of it." Her eyes lit up, tired as she was, and she dropped her bag right there on the floor. "James, that's amazing," she said, crossing the room to wrap her arms around my shoulders. Her warmth pressed against me, steady and real. "You've got this," she whispered, her breath soft against my neck. I held her tight, her faith sinking into me, and for a second, I heard it, Sarah's laugh, sharp and mocking, the one that had followed me out into that rain. I could have been stuck there, broken, if I'd stayed. But I didn't. I chose Clara, chose the grind, chose yes. We sat down with the soup, her knees bumping mine under the table, and talked it out. She asked questions about the menu, the hours. The staff and I fumbled through answers, figuring it out as I went. "You'll be great," she said, spoon halfway to her mouth, her smile small but sure. I wanted to believe her, wanted to be the guy she saw when she looked at me. The next day, Mabel dragged me to the new place, a bigger building, still half finished, with bare walls and a kitchen twice the size of Millie's. "Yours," she said, tossing me a set of keys. "Don't screw it up." I walked the empty space, my footsteps echoing, picturing it full tables packed, food coming out hot, people talking over coffee. It was mine to make work, and that hit me hard. I spent weeks getting ready, hiring cooks, picking out chairs, scrubbing every corner until it shone. Clara helped when she could, painting walls on her days off, her laughter filling the quiet. The first day we opened, I stood behind the counter, my stomach in knots, watching folks file in. They ate, They paid, they came back. It wasn't perfect, orders got mixed up. A fryer broke, but it worked. I worked. Nights, I'd come home to Clara, her arms pulling me close, and I'd tell her about it, the good, the bad, the way it felt to build something from nothing. She'd listen, her head on my chest, and I'd think about that slammed door, the rain, Sarah's voice fading into nothing. This was better, harder, but better. I'd said yes to Mabel, yes to this life, and every time Clara smiled, I knew I'd chosen right. The diner wasn't just a job, it was proof I could rise, proof I was more than the guy they'd locked out, and I wasn't letting it go. Years rolled by like the steady hum of the diner's exhaust fan, each one stacking up into a life I'd fought for. Clara and I got married in a quiet little ceremony, her in a simple white dress, me in a borrowed suit. Our daughter, born a year later, with her mom's dark hair and a laugh that could melt me. The diner thrived, a second home where I knew every creak in the floor and every regular by name. I'd built it from the ground up, turned it into something solid, something mine. Sarah was a memory I'd buried deep, her texts and emails long gone, the past sealed shut like an old wound. I didn't think about her, didn't need to. My world was Clara, our girl, the clatter of plates on busy mornings. Then one day she showed up. I was opening the diner, flipping the sign to open and wiping down the counter, when I saw her through the glass. Sarah, sitting in the corner booth. Older now, her hair chopped short, her face thinner, lines carved around her eyes. She wasn't alone. Lila and Mara were with her, their heads bent low, whispering like they were plotting something. My stomach dropped, a cold weight settling in, but I didn't flinch. I pushed through the door, the bell jingling sharp above me, and walked over. "James," she said, her voice small, cracked, like she hadn't used it in a while. I stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, waiting. "I've been looking for you for 13 years, she went on, her hands twisting together on the table. "Please, we need help." I didn't say anything, just stood there, letting her words hang. She looked up, her eyes wet, and kept talking, said the business she'd started with. Her friends had tanked. Her marriage had fallen apart. She was drowning in debt. Lila chimed in, her voice shaky. "We didn't know where you went. We thought you'd come back." Mara nodded, her lips tight, like she was holding something in. I listened, my boots planted firm on the floor, the smell of coffee drifting from the pot behind me. They were unraveling right there in my diner, spilling out a mess they wanted me to fix. I didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't ask why they thought I'd care after all this time. I saw Sarah's hands tremble, saw the way her shoulders slumped, and I remembered that night, the rain, the door, the way they'd laughed while I stood shivering. "Please, James," she whispered, "we're family. Family." The word hit me, but it didn't stick. I thought about Clara, our daughter asleep in her crib, the life I'd built brick by brick. This wasn't my family, not anymore. I pulled out my wallet, grabbed a pen from the counter, and wrote a check, $22.75, the exact cost of a taxi to the nearest shelter. I slid it across the table, my hands steady. "That's what I've got for you," I said, my voice flat. "Take it and go." Sarah stared at it, her mouth opening like she wanted to argue, but I turned away before she could. I walked back to the kitchen, my heart pounding but my steps even, and started prepping for the lunch rush. I heard them leave. The bell jingled again, softer this time, and when I glanced out the window, they were gone, Sarah's head down, Lila and Mara trailing behind. The diner filled up after that, truckers, locals, a couple kids arguing over fries, and I worked through it, flipping burgers, pouring coffee, keeping my hands busy. But my mind stayed on her, on the way she looked at me, desperate and lost. I didn't feel good about it, didn't feel bad either, just empty, like I'd finally closed a book I'd left open too long. That night, I drove home, the road dark and quiet, and found Clara in the kitchen, warming milk for our girl. I told her everything, Sarah showing up, the check, the way I'd walked away. She didn't flinch, just handed me a spoon to stir the chili simmering on the stove. "She can't take anything unless you give it," she said, her voice calm, her eyes steady on mine. I nodded, stirring slow, the smell of spices filling the room. She was right. Sarah could beg, could cry, could show up 100 times, but she had no power here, not unless I let her in. I wouldn't. We ate together, the baby asleep upstairs, and later we sat on the porch under a blanket, the night cool around us. I watched the stars, Clara's hand warm in mine, and felt the past settle where it belonged behind me. Not in me. Sarah was gone again, maybe for good this time, and I was still here, standing tall in a life I'd made. The diner was buzzing when I left that afternoon, the lunch rush fading into the hum of late-day coffee drinkers. Sarah's visit still hung in my head, her tired eyes and trembling hands replaying like a movie. I couldn't shut off. I'd sent her away $22.75 sand, a cold goodbye, and as I walked to my truck, I glanced back through the window. She was still out there, sitting on the curb across the street, Lila and Mara hovering close, their voices sharp even from a distance. She was crying, her shoulders shaking, and they were whispering, throwing glances my way like I'd done something wrong. I didn't stop, didn't go back, just climbed into the cab and started the engine, the rumble drowning out the guilt trying to creep in. They were falling apart right where I'd started all those years ago, but I wasn't them anymore. I'd clawed my way up, built a life that didn't bend to their chaos, and I wasn't about to let it unravel now. The drive home was quiet, the road winding through town, past the barber shop where I'd first landed, past Millie's, still standing strong. I thought about that night in the rain, the way I'd walked away with nothing but wet clothes and a broken spirit. Seeing Sarah today, begging for help, it hit me I didn't belong to that world anymore. Didn't owe it a damn thing. I pulled into our driveway, the little house Clara and I had bought last year, glowing warm under the porch light she'd left on for me. Inside, the smell of chili greeted me, spicy and thick, simmering on the stove. Clara was in the kitchen, her hair tied back, stirring the pot while our daughter giggled in her high chair, smearing mashed peas on her tray. I dropped my keys on the counter, the weight of the day slipping off me, and Clara turned, her smile soft. "Rough one?" she asked, reading me like she always did. I nodded, leaning against the doorway. Sarah showed up with Lila and Mara, asked for help. Her spoon paused mid-stir, but she didn't flinch, just looked at me, waiting. I told her the rest, how they'd sat there, how Sarah had pleaded, how I'd given them cab fare and walked away. Clara set the spoon down, wiped her hands on a towel, and came over, her arms sliding around me. "You did what you had to," she said, her voice steady, her cheek pressed against my chest. I held her close, breathing her in soap and chili, and something sweet I couldn't name. "She was crying when I left," I said, quieter now. "They were a mess." Clara pulled back, her eyes meeting mine. "She can't take anything unless you give it," she said, firm but gentle, like she was handing me a truth I needed to hold on to. I nodded, letting it sink in, and she handed me a spoon. "Stir this. I'll get the bowls." We moved together, easy and quiet, setting the table while our girl babbled, oblivious to the weight I'd carried in. Dinner was simple, chili, cornbread, a glass of water, but it felt like everything, the warmth spreading through me as we ate. Clara talked about her shift, a patient who'd thanked her with a shaky smile, and I listened, the diner and Sarah fading with every word. After, we cleaned up, her washing dishes while I dried, our shoulders brushing in the cramped kitchen. The baby was asleep by then, tucked in upstairs, and we stepped out onto the porch, a blanket draped over us as we sat on the old swing I'd fixed last summer. The night was cool, the stars bright, and Clara's hand found mine under the fabric, her fingers lacing through mine. "You're not that guy anymore," she said, her voice low, like she knew I needed to hear it. I squeezed her hand, the swing creaking under us. "I know," I said, and I meant it. I'd watched Sarah cry, watched her friends scramble, and I hadn't felt the pull to fix it, not like I would have back then, when I was still tied to her, still hoping she'd care. That James was gone, washed away in the rain, replaced by this one, the one who ran a diner, who came home to a family, who chose peace over pity. We sat there a while, the quiet wrapping around us, the porch light casting a soft glow across the yard. I thought about the check, the way Sarah's face had crumpled when I slid it over, and I didn't feel triumph or anger, just nothing. She was a stranger now, a piece of a past I'd outgrown. Clara leaned her head on my shoulder, her breathing slow, and I felt the world settle heavy, but right. This was mine, our daughter, this house, this life, and Sarah couldn't touch it, couldn't shake it loose. The swing rocked gently, the night stretching out, and for the first time, I didn't hear the echo of that slammed door. I heard Clara, the crickets, the faint hum of the town I'd made my own, and that was enough. 13 years ago, I was nothing but a shadow in the rain, left out in the cold with a slammed door ringing in my ears. Now, I'm standing in my kitchen at dawn, the sun cutting sharp lines across the floor, sipping coffee while the house hums with life. Clara is still asleep upstairs, her soft snores drifting down, and our daughter's tucked in her room, her little chest rising and falling under a quilt I patched together last winter. The diner, my third one now, is waiting for me. Ovens warm, staff bustling, another day to keep it all running. I set the mug down, the steam curling up, and lean against the counter, letting the quiet sink in. Sarah hasn't tried again, not since that day she showed up. Not since I handed her that check and walked away. No texts, no emails, no shadows in my booths. I don't know where she is, don't care to. But I know she saw it, the truth in my eyes. The life I'd built without her. I'm not the guy she locked out anymore. Not the fool who waited for her to care. I'm James' husband, father. Man who rose from nothing, and that's the real ending, the one I wrote myself. The morning unfolds slow and steady, the way I like it. I pull on my jacket, lace up my boots, and head out. The air crisp against my face. The drive to the diner is short. The town waking up around me, lights flicking on, a dog barking somewhere down the street. I unlock the place, the familiar jingle of the bell greeting me, and start the routine, check the ovens, count the till, nod to the cook flipping sausage on the grill. It's mine, all of it, built from years of sweat and stubborn will. Customers trickle in, regulars with their usual orders, and I move between the counter and the kitchen, keeping it smooth. A guy in a plaid shirt asks for extra bacon, a kid spills juice on the floor, and I handle it calm and sure. This is my world now, not hers. Back then, I thought revenge would be loud yelling, fighting, making her feel what she'd done. But it's not. It's this tucking my daughter in at night, her tiny hand grabbing my finger, kissing Clara goodnight as we fall asleep, holding hands, watching the sunrise over a life I earned. Sarah doesn't get a say in it, doesn't get a piece. She shut me out, and I thank God for it every day because it pushed me here, to this. Midday hits, and the diner's packed, the clatter of forks and chatter filling the air. I pour coffee for a trucker, wipe down a table, and catch my reflection in the window older. Now, lines around my eyes, but steady. I think about that night, sometimes the rain soaking through me, the way I walked away with no plan, no hope. It feels like someone else's story, a guy I used to know. I don't hear her laugh anymore, don't feel the sting. It's gone, washed clean by years of hard days and good nights. When the rush dies down, I step outside for a breather, the cool air hitting my lungs. The street's quiet, just a few cars rolling by, and I lean against the wall, hands in my pockets. I built 3 diners from that first dishwashing gig, turned a broke man's stumble into something solid. Clara believed in me. Mabel gave me the shot, and I took it, ran with it, until it became this. Sarah thought I'd disappear, thought I'd break, but I didn't. I rose higher than she'll ever know. Back inside, the day winds down, and I lock up, the lights dimming behind me. The drive home is easy, the radio low, and when I walk through the door, Clara is there, stirring something on the stove spaghetti tonight, her hair loose around her shoulders. Our daughter runs over, her arms out, and I scoop her up, her giggles loud in my ear. "Daddy's home," she shouts, and I kiss her forehead, the warmth of her small body grounding me. We eat together, the table messy with sauce and crumbs, and after, I wash dishes while Clara puts the little one to bed. The house settles the sound of soft water running, footsteps upstairs, the creak of the floor. I keep meaning to fix. Later, we sit on the couch, her legs over mine, a blanket pulled close. She talks about her day, I tell her about the diner, and we laugh over nothing, the kind of quiet joy I never knew I could have. Bedtime comes, and I kiss her goodnight, her hand slipping into mine as we drift off. The dark is gentle, the world outside still, and I don't dream of rain or locked doors. I dream of this coffee at dawn, my daughter's laugh, Clara's steady breathing beside me. It's not a loud win, not a shout. It's a life full and real, and as I lie there, the clock ticking soft, I know it's the best ending I could have asked for. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious.